Item number 12, proposed fire department staffing expansion budget. Chief Wegman or Carolyn, I don't know who's speaking.
I'll start if you don't mind. So at your October 28th, 2024 meeting, Chief Wigman presented a detailed report concerning fire staffing and concerns about the decline in volunteer firefighters. At the April 28th meeting earlier this year, he then spoke about this in greater detail, and costs were shared with the board at your June 23rd public meeting. The rationale for the conversion was shared with the Public Safety Committee meeting in May, and the financial data was reviewed with the Finance Committee on July 24th. Since then, finance staff prepared an estimate of the cost for this expansion using Chief Wigman's staffing recommendations of 6 firefighters on a squad in the terms of current collective bargaining agreement. The benefit costs were calculated based on current premiums, projected premium increases for health insurance, and an equal mix of participant classifications, meaning employee, employee spouse, or family coverage. Since that time, we've gone back to Chief Wigman's original proposal in October, which had been for 5 on a shift, and those numbers are presented tonight as one of the alternatives. During the discussion at the June 23rd meeting, the board requested us to evaluate overtime costs if the township were to take a phased approach over 3 years and increase real estate taxes each year over 3 years instead of 1. At your July 28th meeting, board consensus was to host in-person meetings to give residents a chance to learn about the plan, the reason for it, and the impact it would have on their township real estate taxes. Emails were sent to all the homeowners association points of contact for the residential neighborhoods in the township. We also publicized the plan in our e-news and social media platforms. Chief Wegman and I met with residents in Montgomery Walk and Neshaminy Falls. Both are 55 plus communities. No other HOA had reached out to request a meeting. We also did a podcast on this, as well as have now a dedicated webpage, which on our home screen, there's a button you can go to and it gives all the information. On Thursday, August 28th, Chief Wegman and I hosted an in-person town hall meeting here at the Township Building. It was live streamed and recorded. A postcard mailer announcing the discussion as tonight's meeting and providing a QR code to the dedicated webpage was mailed to 11,304 addresses, including residents and businesses. The fire department's proposed 2026 budget includes 4 staffing scenarios that Chief Wegman, Mr. Berge, and I are prepared to discuss this evening.
Okay, so I think it makes sense before we do this, so we open up for public comment. And so this is the opportunity for anyone to come forward. And again, we ask that you come forward to the mic, state your name and address for the record. And we do ask that we keep it to 5 minutes per person, if possible. This is public comment, so it's not really so much a back and forth versus we want to hear from the community. We want to hear, what possibly questions, comments, concerns. If there's something we have to get back to you on, we can. But this is an opportunity for you to share, what you'd like to share with us. Okay.
Good evening. Kara Slasky, 6 Muley Avenue. We live in the part of the township that is on the other side of the 5 Points intersection. And our concern is, regardless of whether our fire company is staffed by paid firefighters or volunteers or a combination of both, is the response time to get to a fire on the other side of the 5 Points intersection. Thank you.
Hi, Denise Eshelman. I live at 106 Caldwell Court. I appreciate all the notifications you said you got. Unfortunately, this is what I got. Nothing from my HOA. So I wanted to come tonight and just share a couple thoughts. One was, I appreciate that we need a reliable fire company, obviously, whether it be with hired or with volunteers or a combination. I was wondering if there was ever a consultant firm obtained as an independent to check on the safety, the staffing needs. And I know that all costs money, but sometimes penny wise and pound foolish if we don't invest in an independent analysis of the needs. I looked at the millage tonight and I'm kind of ignorant, so I really had to do a little research. But the increase of 1.4 mils was quoted on this card, which takes me from 2.94 to additional 1.4. It's actually an increase of 47.6% of our township taxes for this expenditure, which is significant for a lot of people. Besides this card and the flashing signs on Horsham Road, that was the only information I really had. And my bad, I should have looked more into it, seeing those flashing signs. But looking up over Pennsylvania, seeing that there's over 2,559 municipalities, only which 33 have fully paid fire personnel. That may not address what our need is, but we have to look into maybe a gradual phasing in for those who these taxes might be onerous to. The only other thing I want to say, and this is anecdotal, and maybe it's totally false. I'm a professional who comes in contact with a lot of people on a daily basis. And I started discussing what's going on with the fire department in this township. And I happened to run across someone who was a volunteer fireman for this township, whose name I shall not repeat because, quite frankly, I don't even remember. But he shared with me something really concerning, and it made me come here tonight because pretty much I think it's a done deal, and I think it doesn't matter what I say because that's pretty much the way things seem to go. He was concerned that a lot of the volunteer firemen, not a lot, I should say he and some of the volunteer firemen felt as though they were not very welcome. They were being kind of encouraged to leave in order to replace them with fully paid individuals. For whatever reason, the top people really wanted to do this model. And he was kind of hurt by it. And he really felt like it was going to do a disservice to the community. Now, I don't know if this is fact or fiction. I have no idea. I'm not on the inside. But it concerned me a lot that he was like, no, there's a lot more people that want to do this and this, but we feel like we're just being pushed out and this is the model that's going to get done and that's just the way it is. So I'm just putting it out there not to be a meanie, but I got to wonder if there's any truth behind that. It's kind of sad. And that we didn't have an independent thing. I'm very scientific. I analyze everything, and this wasn't analyzed. If you have a very serious disease and you have one person tell you something, you're going to get a second opinion before you do something really important. And that's kind of how I look at it. Thank you.
Can I just, I do want to make a comment to a done deal. So it's not a done deal yet. There is still conversation that's happening. We are still just trying to hear from folks and, take everything into consideration. So nothing is done deal. We're getting closer to decisions being made, but we're not there yet. And then with regard to, and I'm just, because these are things that have come up and been talked about. So you talked about a third party coming in. So that was a conversation that did happen at one of our meetings, and it was voted that we were not going to bring in a consulting firm. So I don't know if you knew that. So I just wanted to answer that, if that was a question for you or not. Okay, I didn't know. Okay.
No, I wasn't here, but I read it online.
Okay.
I was very disappointed to hear that because I think then it would remove the onerous on 1 or 5 people from making that kind of huge decision for the entire community. I would rather pay for that, contribute to that consult and be sure that it's just not one person not wanting to juggle too many balls over 3 years of integrating both paid and volunteer. That's a lot of work, I'm sure. It's way easier to just wipe the slate and just start over. That's kind of how I feel. And I'm sure if I was at the top, I'd want to, make it easy. But I might be able to afford this kind of thing, but some people may not. It might be really hard. They might, like I am retirement age, but I'm still working, but I hear every day, I take care of retired people, how hard it is to make it ends meet. No, they don't want their house to burn down another 5 minutes. But honestly, sometimes they can't pay for heat. They can't pay for food. and honestly,
Thank you. Thank you.
And one other thing, Audrey, with the volunteers, there is no move to push out the volunteers. The chief has consistently said this will be paid and volunteer will continue.
And I don't know if I'm overstepping my bounds, so Chief, save me right now, possibly. But it just recently, if everyone hasn't heard, one of the things that just got approved was the school district giving a rebate for specifically for volunteers. And I am here to tell you that Chief Wegman was instrumental on working on that and getting it across the finish line. So, volunteers are still very needed, still a part of our community. Hopefully, will continue to be a part of the community.
Madam Chair, members of the board, my name is Bernie Hines. I'm 110 Matthew Drive, been a resident of the township for the last 35 years. My wife and I raised our daughters here. Our granddaughters are now coming to Montgomery Township as well. 32 years ago, our 2-year-old daughter had a meltdown on Christmas Eve, just at the time that Santa Claus came by in a fire truck. I said, yep, that's something I need to do. The next week, I was up at the Stump Road Firehouse and I volunteered. I soon became battalion chief. I organized the Montgomery Township Fire Department along with Chief Wegman and a number of the dedicated volunteers who are still here tonight. I'm a charter member and a life member of the Montgomery Township Fire Department. I've not been able to be active very long because I have my own business. I do a lot of traveling. I have had the chance, however, of reading Chief Wegman proposals. I've watched all of the township videos. I listened to the podcast. Thank you, Madam Manager, for putting that together and for the extensive amount of communication there's been to the residents of the township for this proposal. It's interesting to note that we are standing at the crossroads right now of the township where there needs to be an adaptation of something that needs to happen. The demographics have changed. When I was the president of the township fire department, the township board did not look like this. It was much different. And we adapted to that. In the fire profession, every fire is different. You may decide that an inch and 3/4 inch hose is going to do the thing, but you really need something different. You always need to adapt. We find ourselves now at a time of having to adapt in this township to changing dynamics, less volunteers, more fire exposures. The commercial residential dynamics have also changed. More people are driving through the township, so there are more vehicle rescues. We have 202 bypass coming through, or as I call them that earlier today. So all to say, I admire Chief Wegman. I've not spoken to the chief for a number of years. I remember his son, when he brought him first in the fire department, was this big. And I remember, Chief, you said your son has no interest in being a member of the fire department. I don't know what happened to you with regard to that, but that doesn't define real leadership at home. But I know Chief Wegman's leadership in the fire department has been exceptional. If I were a township manager and I could pick someone to lead a combination or paid or an all volunteer fire department, Bill Wegman would be the only choice. He is a man of humility. He's a man of integrity. He's a man of leadership. The culture within the fire department is one that has to be emulated by many township fire departments throughout the Commonwealth. I know that even today, there are many township fire departments that contact ours to find out what would you do in this situation. It is not the greatest of things to look at a tax increase, but much like you mentioned, how do you put a price on a home, on a life, on a family that's traveling through on the 309 bypass? You can't. But it is extremely comforting to know that this township has a fire department that is comprised of volunteers and paid personnel that answer the call each and every day. There are times at 2 o'clock in the morning when the automatic fire alarm goes off And I can tell you from personal experience, one of the greatest, most humbling experiences is when someone's carbon monoxide detector has gone off in their basement, not a fire, not a rescue, but just a carbon monoxide detector. And you have all these volunteers and combination people showing up, and you've run the tests and all the measurements are normal. But you can look that mom or dad in the eye and say, folks, we've tested your house. You can go back to sleep now. And they extend you a hand of thanks. There's nothing that compares to the amount of training that our volunteers and the combination people in this department go through in order to make those decisions, tactical, strategical decisions, the amount of pre-planning that goes on to make sure that the equipment gets to the fire and the right equipment gets to the fire and the right hydrant gets hit and the right equipment, the right volunteers pull up to the house and one goes after the other to make sure that the house is properly ventilated, the fire gets attacked, the people are saved. Yes, I've been at those situations where you've stood outside as I was a battalion chief when you're the first one on scene and you're waiting and waiting and waiting for the trucks to come. And finally, you start hearing the sirens. The opportunity to have a fully staffed, fully combination department, as Chief Wegman's proposal has outlined, is something that I would urge the board to give positive consideration to. It's something that I truly in my heart believe we need as we continue to evolve in this township to make sure that Montgomery Township maintains the quality of life for its residents and businesses throughout the year. I know that you in your fiduciary capacity and Chief Wegman with your leadership will continue to keep your eyes open and keep a check on the pulse of other opportunities that might exist for grants and other ways of reducing taxes if this proposal is adopted by the board. There will be other ways in which once the paid people are retained, that there may be a chance to reduce those taxes. I do know that going from an ISO class 4 to an ISO class 2 township, which the chief mentioned may very well happen once this proposal gets adopted, may save on the order of between 10 and 15% on our premiums for insurance for homeowners coverage. That's a good thing. That hits the pocketbook. Yes, we'd have to pay more in taxes to get that done. But in the age in which we live today and the way the demographics have changed, I would respectfully request that the board give positive consideration to Chief Wegman's request and be pleased to work with Chief Wegman and the board based upon past history of things which probably are no longer relevant, but just from a standpoint of having the fire department and volunteerism in the heart. Be happy to work with you in any way, shape, or form you may require. And while I have the chance to have the microphone again, Chief, thank you for all that you've done for the department over the years. Thanks to all the volunteers who are here. I can tell you how proud I am of you and the history that you have continued to make and the legacy you leave for this township. It makes me proud to be a resident of this township, and you should be proud of what you do as well. The amount of retention and recruitment that is done by Rachel and the department is extraordinary. And as you mentioned, Madam Chair, the opportunities to work with the school board is also something very, very positive. Thank you very much for your time. And again, I respectfully request you adopt Chief Wegman's proposal when the opportunity presents itself.
Thanks for your comments. I just want to say real quickly, thank you for those comments and for just pointing out the great job that our chief does and that our volunteers do and that our paid staff do. No matter where this discussion goes, no matter what happens, we really do owe them all a debt of gratitude for keeping us safe. So I just would like to, you know,
Hi, my name is Sunny, 102 Birch Court. I obviously I'm not in the fire industry, so can't comment on the proposal or all that stuff. But I think sounds like you know what you're doing, and sounds like it's a good proposal. I'm not here to argue that. I don't know anyone that would argue not building a at par fire department, right? I find it hard to argue against that, truthfully. With that said, though, I think, and I love living in the township. I've lived here since I moved here to Pennsylvania 15 years ago. So I mean, I can't speak more highly than I already do of the township. However, there is some distrust. I'm on the board of 2 different HOAs in the township. I own multiple homes in the township, and as a board member of 2 HOAs, I did not ever get notification. I did reach out to the other board members as well as the property management firm that we hired. No one knew anything about this. No one was notified. So that's a little disheartening, built a little internal distrust. I'm assuming it's probably just broken communication because I think there's so many moving parts, and I'm hopeful that's what it is. But it sounds like maybe other HOAs also were in that kind of situation. Regardless, I think when we come down to, yes, I think we should have a better safety for our families. How we get there, I think, is another question. It's easy for a computer software to say, here's how much money we need, and here's how much we raise taxes, right? But that's not what we have a smart, qualified, voted board for, right? A computer software can do that. I think it's our job as kind of business leaders, township leaders, organization leaders to get creative. And I can say on one of my HOAs, I continually reduce HOA fees in the last several years, which, as you all know in this room, nothing has gone down in the last several years. I think we get creative, we leverage, we group purchase, every industry's got that in there. And so I would urge the board here to really maybe think about that, especially as we're putting up large buildings here. I think there's other creative ways to get that money than just raise dues. And after everything that happened with the high school and how that got voted down with the building of the high school and all that, I think this is, speaking with other neighbors in the community, this is really a bad taste in our mouth and again, not saying we shouldn't build the fire, but should we not develop our children and their school, which is totally antiquated, right? And so just to add more muddiness to this, right? Like, what about the school? What about the children? And then I think if, objectively, we can look at this all day, but I think also from the human touch, right? We're a community, right? First and foremost. Merck is doing a 10% layoff. J&J is doing a 10% layoff. You look across the board, you talk to any of your neighbors in any industry, right? I'm also in healthcare. Jefferson has done major layoffs, right? So yes, human lives and fires matter, but when you go to the hospital, you should see how unstaffed we are. And I'm not saying that's okay, but that's the reality of where we're at in every industry right now. And so I know it's not the popular thing to say more money and hiring more people is probably the wrong thing at this time. But from a human standpoint, we got to think about this. Our neighbors are about to start foreclosing on their homes soon. Okay. If Merck, as our backbone right here in our backyard, does a 10% layoff, if everyone's doing 8,000 employees laid off, each of us in this room, if not ourselves, maybe someone sitting next to us, is going to experience a home that can't pay their bills. And at that same time, to throw them another hike here, and then the HOA gives them a hike, and then their food costs more. We're a community. It's not the right time for that. Thank you. I noticed the Bills shoes. Sorry for the loss, but but thank you, and thank you for all you do.
Sir,
Thank you.
can you repeat your name and address, please?
Yes, Sunny, 102 Birch Court.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Sobis. I live at 104 Carnaby Circle in the Montgomery Lee development off of Keenest Road. And I've been a resident of Montgomery Township for about 30 years now. I'm a retiree for 5 years. And as a former actuary, nothing speaks to me louder than numbers. So I went back and looked at what our history of our millage rates have been back since 2020. And if this proposal goes through, as mentioned, the 1.4 additional millage increase, it would bring, as the lady mentioned here, our millage rate would increase 47.6%. Back in 2024, it went up 18.1%. 2022, it went up 67%. So every 2 years, there seems to be a pattern of rate shock in our millage rate. And if you spread that out annually since 2020, that's the same as increasing our millage rate 22% per year, which I'm hard pressed to think of anything that's really going up that much. Now, I'm sure no quarrel about any of the things we're using this money for. I mean, I'm all aboard with improving the fire department, and I'm sure all these other items that I mentioned, these increases here are for very, very good reason. Just want to make the board aware that this is painful for people on a fixed income. To have something go up 22% every year when all your income is coming from a fixed pension, Social Security. Just be mindful of that when you make these decisions. That's all I ask. Thank you.
How's it going? I'm Chris. I'm at 125 Stamen. And kind of to add on to your point, just one thing I wanted to point out is, our neighborhoods are starting to kind of slightly turn over a little bit. There is no more $1,500 mortgage. The interest rate at a minimum is at least 5.5%. So as you continue to increase the taxes, our mortgages are going to go up drastically. And kind of to the point of people start getting laid off and foreclosed, we're not going to be able to make those payments. So thank you.
Hello, Homer Lizardo, 119 Embassy Drive. I just have some questions about what was put out in the minutes versus the proposed budget. In the minutes, you're showing a millage rate option of 5 additions per shift, so 0 millage increase. But then you go to 7 hires at 1.0 millage, 11 hires 1.0 millage, and then 15 hires at 1.25 millage. But when you go to what you have as the proposed budget, the millage is 0.31, 1.15, and 1.4. And yet the numbers don't seem to correspond with the number of hires. You go from 0 to 7, and then to 11, and then to 5. So if I look at the 4 increases across those, something doesn't add up. So to me, there needs to be a working meeting to really go through and understand how these numbers are being developed. What do they really mean? And what is it going to mean for the long term? We saw already from the Water Authority that we're looking at an increase in our water bills as well, and pretty substantial. So, but they provided a very detailed structure of what the projects are and what everything is going to be coming into play. When I looked at the budget that is going to be talked about later on, so I'm sorry to jump ahead. There's like $37,000 in consulting services as an expenditure when you go to the 7 and the 11 and the 14 hires. I'm like, why do you need consulting services for something you've already adopted? So that there's a lot of questions, and I don't think we're going to get it all hashed out here. But just like you did for your budget meeting, I think you need to have a workshop where you really take people through this and really explain how this is really going to impact. And while you do have options of different numbers of firefighters that you will be putting on at different times, we haven't really seen how are you going to make that work. I mean, yeah, if you're just going to say, yeah, we're just splitting it up so it's not as big a burden, going down the line, year 2, is that when you're going to bring the next ones on and the next ones, or is there going to be a little bit more separation to ease the burden, given all the other things that are going to be coming along? The other question I have is how many homeowner associations are there in the township? Quite honestly, the only ones I know of are the Neshaminy Falls one, because they're probably one of the bigger ones, but I've never really heard of it. The neighborhood I live in, if there's a homeowners association, they've never contacted me for anything. So, and they haven't even told me anything about, I can't do this, I can't do that, because there are no deed restrictions per se. So that's what I think of as a homeowners association, where somebody is actively doing that. But I am curious as to, you say you've reached out to homeowners association, how many are there, and is there a way to put a listing for that out on the website or something? So maybe you can engage more people that way if you know there's a contact. Once you put a contact out there, there's somewhere to go to, versus I could spend hours trying to search down and not be able to find it. So thank you.
My name is Warren Sabia. I live at 111 Pinecrest Lane. At a previous meeting, the supervisors voted to accept the fire chief's recommendation. These are some rhetorical questions for you and the residents, just for everyone to think about. Does our fire chief know more than all fire chiefs' knowledge? Do the supervisors have an educational background and experience to evaluate the fire chief's proposal? Why did the supervisors put away money to hire a consultant? It appears that the previous supervisors recognized the need. What changed? The current fire department cannot be detached. They have a vested interest in the decision. The statement in the postcard that a fire can double every 30 seconds is a scare tactic. In 1 minute, under that circumstance, it would be 4 times larger. 3 minutes, 64 times larger. In 5 minutes, so they can't get there in 5 minutes, it'd be 1,000 times larger. That type of increase in the size of the fire usually goes someplace where you have flammable liquids. There are serious economic problems in the U.S., and I don't care how anybody cannot think that there are not. This September and October, just those 2 months, the national debt went up $1 trillion. Tariffs are taxes on the citizens. Food prices are skyrocketing. The federal government has been shut down for over a month. They just came back. Businesses are suffering. A few days ago, Wendy's announced 300 locations are closing. Farmers are going bankrupt. School taxes are increasing rapidly. Some people in this area are living in their cars or in parks. I've seen them. The president wants to deny SNAP benefits to the very poor and their children. In the economic crisis that we're in, we should be moving slowly. We should use a consultant who has the statistical expertise to make several recommendations. If anyone had to make a serious medical decision, the prudent decision would be to get a second or even a third opinion, not like we're doing tonight. I recommend that the supervisors go slowly and consider the financial struggles that the township residents are in. They should recognize their limitations on analyzing the firefighting problem. They should use a consultant. The final analysis on everything is where's the balance point? The fire department and the financial situations of the citizens. I ask you to use the money that you reserved in previous time for using a consultant and get a better decision. Thank you.
Hello again. Jay Washewski, 100 Country Club Drive. I was here 4 weeks ago at the meeting where they decided not to hire consultants. That prompted me to dig into the proposal. And as the board knows, I copied you on an email I sent to Chief Wegman. And we found some issues with the annual report numbers that came out. The types of calls didn't add up to the total calls that were by month. So Chief's been great. He met with me for an hour and a half. I've probably spent 20 some hours myself digging through things, talking to him back and forth and so forth. So 2 questions I have, and I'd mentioned it to him the other day, was I would like to see an option in there for where we implement, we make a step, and then when certain conditions and or criteria are met, then we look at adding more full-time firefighters. I didn't see that in there. Right now, the options are
we do it all next year or we phase it in 3 years. I think maybe we could look at an option where we make a step and it's either 1 or 2 more steps if we need to go to a full-time, full crew. And then the other thing is from the data response time. And the chief's been great too. So if I say something inaccurate, please step in now. The fight, what's it, 9 minutes is the general response time. We have, our issue is that on, I think it's weekdays, weekends during the day, and a couple of shifts at night, we're not making that 9 minutes. We're at 10 minutes or plus. And that's where we need to figure out how to get underneath 9 minutes. And, you know, do we have to hire a full-time crew the whole time or not? I don't know. But, you know, would like, you know, us to take the pace and make sure we look at all these different options that way. And there are a lot of factors in there, talking with Chief Bill, the, the camaraderie, you know, the different types of shifts, which ones are optimal. And then with our our volunteers, we don't have that many, a dozen or so that are full-time, and some of them are younger than, or close to my age, and they're in the 50s. So the good news is we do have a class of 10 coming in January for training. You're training them themselves instead of sending them off to somewhere else. And it's what, 220 hours of training they have to take?
Yeah, it's the first time ever in the department's history that we're
Okay.
going to host the National Pro Board Firefighter 1 class. I think as of today, Vinay said we had 11 of our own members that are going to be in the class. And we're working with our mutual aid partners to fill that class.
So I want to mention that besides, you know, going back to, first of all, when I first met the chief, I thanked him for looking at this ahead of time versus we have a horrible accident somewhere and, you know, everybody's blaming each other that we didn't look at this ahead of time. So that's the good news. We're looking at this before it's too late. The other part is that also refutes the part about not wanting volunteers. I didn't pick that up from you at all. There's always innuendo. I'm glad you brought it up, but I wouldn't support the idea that the chief's not looking to work with volunteers also. So, but anyway, wrapping it back up, my 2 questions were, could we look at a third option where we're doing it incrementally and we move forward as conditions or criteria are met? And then the other one is, I'm not sure, you know, we need to have a goal. What response time are we looking at across the board to hit so that we then can pull in the resources it takes to make that? And then the one other thing I mentioned too was, and it may not be true, can you go to a temp agency and get full-time trained firefighters, you know, in emergency? Because like, you just can't go out and grab new firefighters the second you need them, but things like that. So that's one other thought I had. So those are all things to consider as we work on this. I'm going to add, I got involved with this because just my background. I said, why would you go from 5 full-time fire staff of 7 to 25? It didn't make sense. I could see the sense of urgency for doing something. So that's the other part of it is, why do we need to go that fast yet? And so forth. So thank you.
Hi, it's John Scholl, 107 Cambridge Court. Just 2 things. The expenses, I think it's valid. What did you consider to cut? And we're always trying to balance the budget. So that was the first thing, is like, please share with us, tell us what you decided that, hey, if you want to spend it, where are you saving to cover the cost? So maybe does that help? And the other thing is, I don't know what the legal thing is. How do you put this to a vote to the entire township, maybe in May or something like that? I like the fact that you slow it down, but I don't know how to go from here to picking it to a vote. I've attended a few meetings the last few times. I came in at 10 of 7. I was expecting a parking space. I couldn't find any, right? This is great, right? Everybody's here, but that's the first time, right? You guys have been working hard to get the word out, but I don't think it did, right? So I'm just asking, how do you go from getting that vote out, right, and deciding? So again, what are we cutting? And let's put it to a vote to the township before we take this big step. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Jennifer Hunter. I live at 601 Lennox Court in Weathersfield. I just wanted to also tell you that my HOA never said a word to me. I feel really lost because I live in this township and I'm driving through it all the time. And to be honest with you, until I got that postcard last week, I knew nothing that this was even going on. So I had to come and I felt like I needed to say something because these are very hard economic times for everybody right now. I don't think anyone would say otherwise. And I understand that we may need this in the future as our township is growing and getting, more congested. But is this the right time? And can we go slower? And actually, what he just said, I was thinking of too. I recall in the past when there was something major going on, it would be on a ballot that people would have to vote yes or no. There's a lot of people that can't even come to meetings like this. A lot of elderly do not drive at night. People with little kids are home doing homework. They can't be to these things. So I think I don't think enough people know that this is even a topic right now. And this is a lot of money that we're talking about. So I really hope that you guys take more time and maybe give all the people a voice in this at an election, that we can see about that. Thank you.
Good evening. Bill Belmonte, 103 Banbury Avenue. So first, I want to recognize our firefighters for everything that they do. These men and women don't just show up. They spend a lot of time sacrificing with their families to train. They put their lives on the line to protect ours. We're incredibly lucky to have that kind of support and dedication in our community for years. Thank you. Now, I know none of us want to pay more in taxes, especially in times where every dollar matters. I think I've heard that a bunch. But the truth is, our fire service is an insurance policy. You never like paying for insurance, but when you need it, you love to have it. A choking child, a cardiac arrest, a mangled car, a house on fire, take your pick. These are all lives on the line. The heart stops. You have 4 to 6 minutes for that brain to have any chance. There's no time for a second opinion. So you hope you never need them. But when you do, you hope that they have the best training, the right equipment, and enough people to respond quickly. That level of protection doesn't happen by accident. It's something that we in this community invest in together. We live in a great township. I think that's why we're all here. It's a township that we're proud of, we feel safe in, and that safety, that peace of mind is something worth investing in. Sometimes paying for things doesn't mean luxury. It means security, preparedness, and knowing that when the call comes in at 2 a.m., our community has the tools and support to get the help they need. So supporting this doesn't just mean raising taxes. It's about protecting what our community has and what makes our community strong. It's also about saying thank you to our first responders in a way that truly matters, by giving them the resources to keep doing their job well and to come home safely at the end of the day. Thank you.
Got to come down a little bit here. Hi, Brinder Gill at 107 Gwynmont Circle. First and foremost, to reiterate, thank you to all the heroes in the room here. Thanks to all the firefighters that help to keep our community and our loved ones safe every day. I too am not an expert on what all of this means and what do we actually need in terms of the force and all of that. I trust that this was put together and makes sense. The question I have is more so what's been already said today, which is, have we done our due diligence? I understand that there was a consultant that was reviewed, and then I guess we declined that. I think it's worthwhile. We've heard it multiple times from multiple people around the room that we need to try to reopen this and make sure we're making the right decisions. I've heard great ideas like, hey, what are we going to do to try to cut to help to support the costs? That's a great idea. What other ideas do we have to try to mitigate these costs? Yes, surely we may need the additional support, but I think we need to do our due diligence to try to figure out what we can do to limit the costs. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ruth Eisen, 607 Victoria Drive. I've not been here before for any reason, and I've heard a lot of interesting arguments and discussion that I just will briefly comment upon. I'm one of those HOA people who didn't get any information. So I'm also going to be the new president of my HOA, so that might change. Another thing is I've heard, that I've lived in the township for about 8.5 years, not as long as I've been elsewhere here in Pennsylvania and Montgomery County. The fire department and their efforts are tremendous here compared to where the township I used to live in. I'm all supporting of professionalizing the fire department. I think that really makes a lot of sense. The question I think we're all struggling with is how and when and how long is it going to take? I've heard some really strong arguments for I guess the one that struck me the most was a criterion-based implementation plan. There's also that makes a lot of sense to me. If we are going to quote unquote implement it more slowly or gradually according to some of the issues are on the table, I think a criterion-based plan makes a good deal of sense, and we can set those criteria in discussion with one another. I heard people talk about the impact on those with fixed income senior citizens. I hate to admit it, but I'm one of those now. And I wish I were working, but I'm not. And my feeling is that with the sewer and MTMSA increases and school board increases that we are recently implementing, all of which I gladly support and pay. How can we work this into a way that maybe just maybe a little bit take more time and easy without abandoning the goal of increasing professionalism of the police of the, excuse me, of the fire department. So that's all I can remember. I came up to say I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but thank you. And thanks to all the previous speakers because it really helped enlighten me on this matter.
Neil Franklin, 312 Stump Road, 3 houses down from the firehouse on Stump Road. Received this in the mail about how the chief wants to increase paid firefighters because of one reason or another. I have 1 year to go, and I'll have 55 years as a volunteer firefighter as well. I belong to another fire company up the road a little bit that used to protect this community until it decided to have its own Montgomery Township Fire Department. The reason I'm speaking here is I heard a lot of maybe ups and downs or whatever, but being 55 years going on as a volunteer, all these volunteers today, I like to ask them, how many years are they going to have as a volunteer? For one reason, I can't say that when you're a volunteer, normally you don't work in the town that you're protecting. So that's why it's hard to get response people today to answer a fire call. That's all I'm going to say is because I'm for having paid fire companies so we can have a 24/7 fire protection. The main reason I'm saying that is for the fire company to get there first, to get the people out of the house if they're in there. That's a priority that I look for. Thank you.
Any others?
Good evening, everyone. Bruce Whiteman, 206 Eisenhower Lane in Montgomery Walk. And listened to everybody talking. And I just spent 4 days visiting my son in Illinois, where no fire companies are volunteer. They're all paid and have been for 50, 60, maybe 70 years. So we're not used to paid full time. We're used to mostly volunteer. So this is new for us, but it's time that we move forward, because when your house is burning and burning to the ground, you wish they got there sooner. And the chief has given us an opportunity to have that. I think his plan is solid. I'm not a fire person myself, but my son has been for 25 years. I've had many conversations with him, and the stories he's told me about getting there quickly is so important, as that gentleman just said. I did the math. My property's valuation, looking at the charts that were put on the website. Thank you for all that information, by the way. It was wonderful. My bill's going to go up $13.14. I can't even eat at McDonald's for that. I'll give that up any day of the week and twice on Sunday. I vote we move forward with the chief's plan as is. Thank you.
So after hearing everyone and talking like this, the high school renovation that had to go to a vote, like how does something decide that like that had to go to a vote, but this doesn't go to a vote? I'm just curious, like how that happens or how it works.
I was going to say our solicitor might be able to answer that for us.
Thank you very much. As far as staffing, so in Pennsylvania, under the second class township code and under the election code, there are only limited subjects that could be subject to a referendum. I've heard that. And school district and building projects is one of them. As far as staffing for the police or fire company or township employees, that is not. That's the preview of the Board of Supervisors, Council, Board of Commissioners, whatever the governing body is, the township. So if the Board of Supervisors said, I want to go ahead and have a vote on this, if they submitted it to the County Board of Elections, it would be declined. So that's the reason for this. So it would not be eligible to go for a vote under Pennsylvania law.
What a township can do when they want to go for a referendum is if they're going to borrow money to protect open space. So the Montgomery County, Bucks County, there are communities that aren't fully developed yet, that they will ask their residents, do you authorize us to borrow up to so much money to basically preserve land? And a lot of the communities will then go and vote in a referendum, either in the May election or in the November election. But to the solicitor's point, it has to go to the Board of Elections and be approved. They not only approve the content, they approve the language that's to make sure that it's a question that the average voter can understand. And to his point, we're not allowed to do any referendums other than that.
Anyone else?
So good evening. My name is Vinay Sethi. I live at 2005 Jefferson Court. I am the deputy volunteer fire chief for the fire department. Over the past year of talking about this and hearing all those different sides, I see everything. The one thing that as a leader of the department I'm most concerned about is if we are going to get a fire truck out for an incident. There have been Chief Wigman has provided the numbers that are coming, that are being gathered from the county, that are being entered into our system, and we're just running that report, pulling that up, and it shows that the trucks are taking longer to get out. Okay, there are less people are getting on the trucks. There's times when I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to get a truck on the road. We've had some incidents where
where we might not have had a truck, where we might have had to call mutual aid. So you're calling a department 5 miles away. If your house is on fire, that's 10, 15 minutes before that fire truck is getting there. I hope everyone's out of that house already. We are volunteer. I would love to have it the way we are at and have more volunteers come out. I urge anyone listening and anyone here, join. You can join. We have members who are 16 years old. We have members who are over 70. All volunteers. Okay. I've been doing this for almost 30 years. A lot of people have been doing the same as well. Eventually, some of the older people may not want to do it as long. Some of the younger people may want to do it for a long time. But if anyone here is willing to help out, come.
How many volunteers would we need to end this whole
I can't give you that answer because, I mean, with the number of volunteers that we do have, it all depends on. I mean, people have obligations with their families, with their jobs.
Excuse me, Deputy Chief. We always appreciate your comments,
Sorry.
but please direct them to the board. This is not a question and answer back and forth with the public.
Yes.
Okay.
But I do urge anyone to join. Okay, to apply to become a volunteer, and go through the firefighter training. It's about 210 hours for firefighter 1. Meets Tuesdays, Thursday nights, and on Sundays. Starts on February 1st. So put your application in. You go right to our website and join and help out. Thank you.
Steve Splendito, 220 Twining Road. I am a life member for the fire department. I'm also a charter member. How many of you know what a charter member is? Charter member is a member who started the fire department. Okay, I am one of 4 that are left out of a 25-person crew. Mr. Heinz over there, he was our president. Mr. Bean, myself, and there's one other. So it took you 4 directors to get it right. Okay, your first 2. Okay, this woman mentioned volunteers. They were anti-volunteer. They were not used to dealing with volunteers, and they really weren't interested in us. Okay, we fought. Okay, we got dressed in the snow over at Country Furniture to get a fire truck out when we first started. Okay, until they built Battalion 2. All right, so Bill comes along. All right, I got a lot of respect for Bill. He's a friend. Okay, he knew the volunteer aspect, but you're too late. You're not getting the firefighters out, the volunteers out, and now you're in a position where you have to do something. All right, now I live in the township. My taxes are going up, probably. Okay, I spoke to you at that town hall regarding an EMS tax. Okay, you're called a local tax. All right, I think the difference between the EMS tax and your local tax is what you do with it. Okay, EMS tax goes to cops, firefighters, and municipal. Okay, so maybe that tax money from that local tax that you levy against the businesses in town as opposed to the taxpayers that live in the township. Okay, maybe you can compensate from that to support his initiative, which I support. That's it.
Diane Hurd, Douglas Road, Montgomery Township. I just have a question. Has anybody asked why that consulting firm was turned down 3-2? I went on the website today and I was kind of surprised about that. And maybe if we could get a consulting firm to approve the plan, more people would be comfortable with it. Just an idea. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Angel Mejias, 100 Winmont Drive. I've been with the fire department for almost 5 years now. I'm a fire police lieutenant, and I'm also the president of the FDMT Relief Association. The Relief Association mainly overlooks the volunteer side of the department. I've worked at corporate American finance for many years. I was a pastor for 11 years, and now I own my own business in the borough, in North Wilkesboro. And one thing that I've noticed in all the hats that I've worn in life is you can't always make everybody happy, internally speaking, right? You're always going to have your people who don't agree with change. We went through a system conversion once at a credit union that I worked at, and we had grumblings. You know, people weren't happy with the upgrades to the systems, and I think that happens in any organization. I think it speaks volumes of individuals and their character. Chief Wigman has had an open door policy the whole time that I've been in the department. I've literally walked into his office multiple times and interrupted him, and he'll sit there and talk to you. So if there's something that I'm unhappy with, like somebody mentioned earlier, she spoke with a volunteer, he's had an open door, and I think just out of respect, people should step up and speak with that individual directly instead of, we're talking about a emergency organization whose job is to protect all of us. I live in the township with my wife, who's also a member. My taxes are going to go up, and this whole process has been brought to us since immediately after that meeting that he originally had with you guys last year in October. It's all in our records, right? Since November, every monthly meeting since then, 13 times I counted today. This has been brought up, and every time that we discuss this, more information has been provided so that we can give our chief feedback on how we feel with this whole situation. I think a chief, a person who is looking to get rid of volunteers wouldn't do all the things that he has done since then. From inviting volunteers to join a proposal to look at how we can change Battalion 1 to fit a career staff and make it better for the responses. I think we had 6 volunteers, if I counted correctly, that signed up for that. I think a chief who was looking to get rid of volunteers wouldn't be speaking with the county's fire chiefs to create a tax rebate for volunteers. I don't think a chief who was interested in getting rid of volunteers would be having meetings with North Bend School District to have a tax relief. We have an excellent group of volunteers, and I don't think that they realize they might take some of these things personally, because everybody kind of rejects change to one level. Our volunteer crew is just as good as our career staff, and we have an excellent career staff. We have an excellent volunteer staff. And a lot of the issues when we look at responses are not entirely because of the volunteers not coming out. I've seen these trucks driving down 309, lights and sirens. People don't get out of the way. We literally have people who will stop right in front of our vehicles and not move. So imagine if that's the big red engine with lights and sirens flying, trying to get to the scene. Some of these guys just trying to get over 309, to get to the firehouse or to get to the other battalion off Doylestown Road with no lights, all the traffic, even with blue lights, there's no courtesy. So, those responses can be delayed. It makes a big difference, a huge difference. And data, you can't argue with the data. Vinay mentioned we have reports every single month that show what the individual responses are to every single vehicle that is responding to an incident. And you can't argue the facts, right? So that information is coming from county. It's not something where we're jotting down these numbers and making things up. So it has nothing to do with our great professionals, and it's just something that I think we need to consider. I would rather see something happen now than have a massive incident where we lose life and property because we couldn't get there on time. Thank you.
Evening. My name's Lee Morano, 305 Rutledge Court. I'm a member of the fire department. I'm not a fireman. I'm the captain of the fire police unit. I'm also the treasurer of the fire department. We talk about dwindling volunteers. I write the checks. The township supplies us with a tax incentive every year. In January, I write the checks to all our active members. We have 900 calls a year. You have to make a certain percentage of those calls to be considered an active member and receive the check from the township. Last year, I wrote 32 checks to active members. If there's anybody in this room that thinks 32 active members can cover 7 nights a week and weekends without the help of paid volunteer or paid firemen, I don't know how you can figure those numbers out. It's just, there's not enough volunteers. They're dwindling. People have commitments at home. My son joined and then resigned after a couple months because he had too many responsibilities with his 2 kids, and he just didn't have the time to come out and help. And it's that way for everybody. Everybody is against the tax increase. I'm against the tax increase. But if that's what it takes to get what we need to protect our homes and our family, then that's what we need. Thank you.
Good evening. Charles Murphy, 132 Holly Drive. Madam Secretary, board members, I had no intention of speaking tonight. There's been very compelling input from our community. No one wants an increase in taxes, for sure. There are financial pressures on all of us. However, my background is I worked for United Airlines for many years, coming out of the New York City area. I also was a volunteer in the ambulance course in the New York City area. I'm a 9/11 responder. Spent 7 days down there at Ground Zero in New York City. My EMS partner who responded from the New York City court was killed in the collapse of the first tower. I arrived just after the second tower fell. And I was so overwhelmed by not only the devastation, but the amount of damaged fire equipment that was present. I was overwhelmed by the amount of response that came initially from the New York City Fire Department, from every borough in New York City. Throughout the course of that first day, the fire trucks kept coming from Albany, from Schenectady, from Connecticut, Massachusetts. By 5 o'clock in the evening, there were hundreds of fire trucks lined up along the West Side Highway in New York City. The equipment was there. The personnel was there. We don't know in our community what disaster is going to strike, whether it's an airplane crash, some sort of commercial warehouse fire, or something such as our log truck that overturned on 309 earlier this morning, causing a 5.5-hour closure of 309 North. But there was equipment there. I'm sure there was equipment that our chief doesn't use often, but we call upon the resources within our community and outside our community to respond to these unpredicted incidents. I don't want to pay a tax, but I'm so happy that when the one time I called the fire department, they were there to provide for my grandchild. $13, $18, whatever amount is based upon your current home value, I think is minimal. I support our chief's input. But as a consumer who's being bombarded with charges from a variety of sources, I think that our community would welcome the reassurance of a consultancy firm saying, hey, the chief's got it right. And that $13 or $18 is not terrible. When I was a resident in New York City, I knew there was police and fire there for me when I needed it. I have great confidence passing the firehouses in the community that we have the commitment and the equipment to do this. I've been a volunteer for many years, but because of my work schedule, I cannot commit to the schedule. I was blessed, my volunteer corps, I had steady Tuesday nights. I did a 12-hour shift. In our community, I can't be on call. I'm working in a hospital 6 to 6. So I do support the commitment, the paid staff, the increase, but again, for an effort to reassure our community that this is a sound idea. Again, we go to doctors for medical advice, not Dr. Google. We go to surgeons for their professional advice. We go to counsel to tell us what's legit and what's kind of not legit. Again, the reassurance of the consultancy firm, I'm sure, is going to validate our chief's recommendation and request for full-time staffing. I thank you for your time.
I'm here for the second time, but I'm not the first person here for the second time. I guess the rules aren't followed. There are several people that have talked considerably more than the 5 minutes. And I'm concerned that politicians, both Republicans and Democrats, don't give a damn about the bottom 10, 15%. The record from both parties for the minimum wage is a disgrace. There's people here that are hurting. If you look at the news, what's going on, it's hard to find the news because it's been suppressed. People are really hurting. Now, if you're going to push this thing through at this high rate, you want to give some sort of little way people can get away from this, a relief from this. They can apply for a relief because of the situation they're in right now. There's so many people out of work because the president has fired so many people from the federal government. Those services are now but can't be implemented. Then that goes on to the state. It all comes down to us eventually. Now, I think we have enough money and enough people that are wealthy here that we could come up with something to help the people on the bottom end and come up with a method that you could apply and get relief, at least for a year or two, until we get a decent president that gives a damn about people.
Okay, Warren,
And that's really what's going on.
Warren, if we could stay on topic with,
So that's,
that would
you
be
really,
appreciative.
you can do it, but you've heard people say, we're hurting. No, they want something. You got to come up with something in between. We're not broke district, but we have poverty sections in there. And some people on fixed income, some people have all sorts of other problems. They don't have much money, for retirement's bad, or they got fired and laid off. One of the speakers here has to cut her heat simply so she can make ends meet. I happen to know who she is. I'd like to see some people in politics care about the bottom 10 to 15%. We're a district that could do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Anyone else wants to speak? What did you say?
The score of the game.
Oh, the score. All right. Okay, so we're, oh, come on up.
Adam Swislewski, 139 Polo Drive. I just want to say my HOA did distribute notice regarding the proposal that's going on.
You said they did or did not?
Did. Thank you, Montgomery Green. I've been a volunteer firefighter since 1989. I've also been involved in EMS since 1989. Not quite 55 years, but I'm getting there, hopefully. Didn't come out here really out here to talk today. I get super nervous, so I apologize. But for the members in attendance here, I've been the volunteer assistant chief for several years. I've also been a president of the department. It's quite disheartening to hear that because of one member having a negative experience for whatever reason, that kind of gets broadcast amongst the entire department. I've been under Chief Wigman's leadership for the past 6 years. He's done more for this department in that amount of time than anybody else that has preceded him in this time. He's been charged with coming up with a proposal and a way to do this, and I would have an enormous amount of faith for him to take us in the right direction. The support he has from the department, I think you can tell by the number of volunteers that we have here tonight, that the place can't be that bad to volunteer at. We continue to have membership activities, recruitment and retention committees for the department. Just the other night, Lieutenant Stump and I were out putting signs out in yards to come volunteer for Montgomery Township, and we even put the general ones out for Montgomery County to help some of the other departments for people that have just been passing by through the area. So it's really nothing more for me to come up here and say that we appreciate all of Chief Wigman's efforts, and we wouldn't be here if we didn't support him and getting this done for the department and the community.
Okay. First of all, thank you to everyone. I know some folks that did speak also have left already, but really appreciate the input. I mean, this is really what it's about, is to hear from the community and, what folks are saying. And someone said it, I know I say it all the time, whatever decision is made, we're not going to make everybody happy. I know I always say it's what I would love to do is to make everyone happy, but I notice with every decision, every single topic, there's always two sides to it, really three sometimes. But anyway, with that said, I do think that I'm going to open it up to the board, and, we're just going to kind of talk a little bit about the budget, where we are with it. One of the things that we asked collectively at the budget meeting that was open to anyone to come to was to kind of give us a couple of scenarios. So, give us this scenario, this scenario, this scenario. So, it is not a done deal. It is not, a decision has not been made, fully been made. We know something has to happen. And like everyone has said so eloquently in different ways, it's just figuring out what that something looks like. And do we do it over the course of time? Do we do it all at once? Do we do it, just different ways to approach it. We just know that it is something that needs to be approached. So with that, I'm going to kind of open it up to the board to kind of just talk out loud. That's what we're supposed to do in front of our community. So.
Well, I'll just jump right in. So, as our solicitor mentioned, we are. Maybe I'll just talk a little bit. There we go. How's this? Is that better? All right. So, Montgomery Township is a township of the second class, and under the Municipal Planning Code, we are required to provide these services, these fire and emergency services. It's not optional. And unfortunately, we know that volunteerism has been waning. And so when the chief came to us with this proposal, it wasn't really the first time that we had heard this being discussed, and not, and I'm saying this isn't the first time that we're hearing it, not just because the chief has mentioned it, but across the state. We are hearing this from other municipalities. We attend the conferences every year. We have these conversations with our peers across the state, and everybody's faced with the same dilemma. And how do you, sort of pay for expanding, your paid fire staff? It's basically, another unfunded mandate. You have to provide this service. Volunteerism is waning. We have to respond to the needs of the community. So when we came forward with this proposal, I dug right into the data. A data analyst by heart. It's, as I like to say to Audrey, it's my jam. So I dug right in to the data that was provided, and I had a lot of questions. Chief did a great job of answering those questions and providing more information. One of the things that I really wanted to see us do, however, because of some of the questions I had, was to work with consultants to provide some additional insight, really stress some of the assumptions that were made in this process so that we had a better sense of confidence over some of the conclusions that were reached in this process. Unfortunately, when it came to a vote, as we were approaching the budget cycle, we were looking at a staffing specific study, received 3 quotes, but it didn't pass. The majority of the board did not agree that they wanted to spend that money in this budget cycle for that additional professional oversight. I still remain convinced that we need another set of eyes on this. As I reviewed the numbers in this proposal, a lot of things are jumping out at me. In fact, Homer, is Homer still here? There he is. Homer pointed out one of the things that I noticed as well, that, in the first scenario where there is 0 firefighters in the expansion, there's a line that's in there for consulting for every other variable, hiring 7, hiring 11, or hiring 15. There's a $37,500 line item for consulting services, but that's not included in the first scenario. So we're increasing revenue, but we're not doing any consulting. I probed for information from staff that consulting service was not for a study, it was for a facilities plan. But we haven't seen a proposal for a facility study. In fact, one of the things that came out as a part of the discussions was that we thought the facilities that we had were adequate. Well, if they're adequate, then why are we budgeting in these scenarios for an additional facility study? So I just feel like there's some maybe inconsistency and maybe not a lot of transparency as it relates to what we believe our facility needs truly are moving forward. But I'll also tell you that in the capital investment plan, as a part of this, we don't have anything projected for facilities renovations in the capital projects. We also have a dwindling capital reserve fund. So, funding, to find the funding necessary to make any sort of renovation is going to necessitate another tax increase. So, and I'm saying this just, for the sake of transparency, that, I feel as if this does require further study, although I hear the need, and I do think the data does support making a move towards adding additional paid staff. But the number and the pace of that is something that I'm absolutely not convinced that we need to do 15 or 19 immediately to meet these needs. And although I again confess, and I think someone else had pointed it out, who on this board is a fire services expert. I don't confess to be, as much as I am a data analyst and have really crunched a lot of numbers throughout this whole process. I can see that there is a need, but how that need should be met, the pace that it should be met at is, beyond my pay grade, if you will. And I think we really, to ensure that we're doing our due diligence and to best serve our community and to be the strong fiduciaries for our township, I think we need to bring in an impartial, unbiased third party to really help us examine this and help us plan how we are going to expand our staff. Because I've said this, started with the comment about what our obligations are, and I'll finish that way too. This is not optional. We have to provide these services. And I think there's a need for us to add additional staff. I'm just at this point not convinced that adding it without adequately really examining and planning for like a phased approach is what I would think would be our best bet. I'm seeing a need for the additional staff. I just think that we need some additional guidance in how best to phase that in.
I'll go next. I am very aware that this is something that we do need to have. It is our responsibility to provide public safety and infrastructure to our community, something we take seriously to the point where we have to acknowledge when we look at these scenarios, what scenarios are we not considering? What do we understand? What don't we understand fully? Consequences of this kind of hiring. Having a comprehensive fire study will give us some of those answers. This is why I voted for that in the first place. And I'm sad to say that we haven't already started that, because I do feel as if there is an immediate need for some changes. The issue is, what is the pace? What is the number? And what are the things that other communities have who are facing the same challenges that we are facing here in Montgomery Township? What are some of the things they have learned as they have expanded? Many other communities are dealing with major volunteerism issues with their fire staff. And I do think that we do need to transition into something that is paying our firefighters for their unbelievable service. But I do think that we need to be cautious, and putting this in front of experts is, to me, something that before I can really make a decision on something like this, I would like to see someone give me that confidence in that. And hearing from you in the community has been so important to me. Again, we sent this postcard out 2 weeks ago. We got it in the mail a week ago today, I believe. I got it in my mailbox as well. And I'm so glad to see so many people showing up and responding to this, because it is something that is important to all of us. So I just want to make sure that we're listening, we're hearing you. We want to make the best decision for the community, for our firefighters, but also for our taxpayers as well.
I will go next. Obviously, it's something that we do need to do. I did not vote for the study. I do feel that we have an expert in our chief. I've been on this board 16 years and I've seen what he has done. He has turned the fire department around. No one else was able to do that. I have complete faith in the fact that he is our study. He has known about the problem. We asked him, how do we fix it? He gave us the answer. It's pretty simple. None of us want to increase taxes, but I want a fire truck. I want a fire truck staffed with people. In a perfect world, Bill would like 19 additional hires. We've talked about other ways we can do this. There's a compromise that we could hire 11. If we hire 11, that allows him to have 4 on a truck And it allows those people, those new hires, to have a 24/72 schedule. This is what every department has gone to because nobody wants a 24/48. If we're going to do this, shouldn't we do it so that the people we're hiring have a chance at mental health and a work-life balance, the things that we all want? That's all I have to say.
So I grew up in North Philly. So as a child, you called the fire department, they were there because they were paid. When I moved out to Montgomery County, Harleysville in 1985, my then husband brought me out to Harleysville and I went, where the heck am I? And realized that there are volunteer fire departments that had to take care of us. Being here in Montgomery Township since 2016, I have come to appreciate our fire, our EMS, our police, our public works. Each and every one of the departments that are here help us as a community to have a better way of living. Of the supervisors here, I am the one who is living single, one income household in our township. When I tell you I don't want to raise taxes, I don't want to raise taxes. I hear about the sewer, I hear about the school district. I have to go out and find health insurance. This is a burden to everyone, and I understand that burden. I also understand that saving money is part of it. And that is why I voted against a consultancy service. We were looking for staffing information. And as Candace said, we have our expert. The chief has done an excellent job. He knows his department, and that is the paid staff as well as the volunteers. And he came to us October of last year and said, we've got a problem with volunteers. And this is not just our problem, this is everyone's problem. What's the solution? And that's where the talk started. We had over 11,000 postcards go out in the mail to our residents and businesses. Yes, we had a relatively full house today, but what percentage came out because of those postcards as well? We all need to be more aware of what's going on in our township. And as an outgoing supervisor, I will tell you, I will keep an eye on what continues to go on here, because that's one of the things that we all as a community need to do. We need to be aware of what's going on throughout our community. And it's difficult because we have our full-time jobs, we've got our families, we've got our lives. But I am encouraging everyone to keep an eye on what's going on. As Vinay said, you have opportunity to volunteer. We would love to have more volunteers come do the work, come take the training, and help supplement our fire department. Again, Chief is our expert, and we did came in originally with 19. He does have the National Fire Police or the Fire Association that tells us how many we should have on board. That was when a change came there. We do have options that came up because we've talked about how do we do this better because of the tax. If I hit the lottery tomorrow and I could say, here you go, I'll make that contribution and I'll put that out publicly. No taxes because we won the lottery. That won't happen. Not necessarily, right? So how do we make an increase that is affordable to more people and that we can actually do what Chief needs to do with our fire department? I agree with Chief. I think he is our expert. And I think we need to do this the way the fire department is calling for.
Why am I always the last to go?
In summary.
In summary. So I think one of the things that really stuck out for me tonight, because I live in an HOA, that there were a lot of HOAs that the word did not get out to, or at least their HOA didn't share. So, maybe the word did get to them, but they just didn't share. I will tell you this, I don't know if my HOA got the notice that was sent out, but I'm going to check. Because I live in an HOA, I proactively reached out and asked if Chief would come, because there was initially conversation on this being, the tax increase to be, it's a concern for anyone. Taxes going up should be a concern for anyone, but specifically for 55 and over communities. And I live in one. I wasn't 55 when I moved there. Truthfully, it wasn't. But I live in a 55. And then it was, let's try to look at other areas. So, Neshaminy Falls, I asked, could he do something there? Just a couple of HOAs that I was familiar with, and maybe someone I knew there, I asked them, are you able to reach out to your HOA and see if, they're willing to do something? Chief's willing to go wherever, talk to whoever about this. Hate to say it, that as much as we've done, I think really have tried to get the word out, I guarantee you there will be someone who didn't hear about this, which also breaks my heart, because I know all 5 of us, as well as our our township staff, the goal is to get the word out, talk about it, figure it out together. At the end of the day, we were voted in to make a decision on behalf of the community. We represent the community. I am retired. I have been for 5 years. I am on a fixed income. I don't want a tax increase, but I also want to remain safe. And so, as it has eloquently been said now a number of times, it's not really a situation of if we're going to do it, it's when and what does it look like. With regard to the staffing study, I shared back when we voted on it, I think even maybe prior to that, because the topic came up a couple of times. And this was me putting my old corporate hat on for 32 years in banking, and having worked with several consulting firms. I have always said, I will continue to say, that from a staffing perspective, nobody knows it better than the people who do the work every day. I'm going to say not even the people who do the work every day, and they know it better than the leaders. They know it better than the leaders. So when my teams would come to me and talk about, hey, I'm struggling, it was my job as their leader to bubble that up, get it going, talk about it, and how do we fix it? And so that was always the approach I attempted to take as a leader. Fast forward to where we are today, and Chief presented to us back in October for the first time that it was ever mentioned, that I can remember that was ever mentioned to us. And then, moving forward, he presented, and I'm going to call it like I've said it out loud. I think to him, I'll say it out loud now. I did it as a leader. You ask for everything, hoping you get something, but you ask for the best scenario, the best situation, because you want to give your team the best, and you want to be the best. You want to be able to show up and show up well. So I'm not mad at him for, putting together a proposal that was really a great full complement proposal. When I look at now, us having the opportunity to sit and talk about at budget time, just conversations over and over about this topic, extremely important topic. We now have looked at and still looking at other scenarios of the proposal. So that's where we are. We're looking at other scenarios of the proposal. And back to, I want to mention again about the staffing study. I was not on board for the staffing piece of it. Not on board for the staffing. I feel we have the experts. We have the folks that do the work every day. We have leaders that have said to us, we have an issue. I mentioned at another meeting, I will say it again, I reached back to a former supervisor from 10 years ago who said this was a problem then. and it has just gotten to be more. When it is time to look at our structures, our equipment, and Chief has said that it's not something we need to look at right now. I am 100% on board with bringing in a consulting, because to me, then now we're not the experts. He's not the expert. I mean, I don't know that Chief can talk about the buildings, and does it make sense to keep 2 or 1, or we should bring in someone to really dive deep into that. But from a staffing perspective, I felt like we had the experts on board. So with that said, with regard to the budget, and I don't know where everybody else is with it, one of the things that got talked about was that we need to, and we want to, have an opportunity to just look at the numbers again, because if there's anything that, like Tanya shared, this is her thing with the numbers, and there were some very, stuff that was pointed out by community, by board members, that maybe we need to just look at them again, make sure the numbers we have in front of us for 7, 11, 15, 19 are accurate, that the community has seen it, so that we feel comfortable to be able to talk about it as a board to anyone who asks us, that we want to possibly get together for another meeting to talk about that. So I don't know, I'm there as far as being able to sit and look at the numbers a little bit further. We know that we hope that we can adopt a budget by the end of this year, but we have a responsibility that from the time we say, okay, we're good with the numbers, it has to be advertised to the community. So we have to keep all of that in mind with regard to, if this is something that'll happen by the end of the year for the first of the year. So I welcome.
I would say I would support having an emergency meeting as long as we could do it within a appropriate time frame, to give staff an opportunity to answer some of the questions that we had in terms of the financial projections with all the different scenarios. Some of the expenses associated with the staffing increase were shown as flat in this proposal, whereas we know that they would increase if we added additional staff. So it shouldn't really be a flat number, 0 versus 7 versus 11 versus 15, yet that's what's in here. Those are the types of things that need to be addressed. I mean, at this stage, I wouldn't feel comfortable really supporting any of these scenarios. And again, would like to see consulting fees included to do a comprehensive fire study. Again, because I think we need to do our due diligence, and this is no disrespect to the chief. I think this adds resources to his team. It helps him develop, or either validate the plan that he's presented, or develop an even better plan that's going to meet the needs of our community. So I would definitely be in support of, tabling this for now, calling another emergency meeting this week so that we could revisit these numbers specifically.
Where do we sit legally if the report comes back that we need 7 on a truck or 7 full-time as opposed to, the 4 or 5? Where are we legally with that? Does that open us up to any liability?
Of course, you can, municipalities are sued all the time for all sorts of various reasons. As far as being opened up legally, various municipalities commission reports for police, fire, all the time. It's up to the Board of Supervisors in your discretion to either follow those recommendations or not follow those recommendations. You should always look and take those actions very seriously, and perhaps that could be raised in a discovery question. But just because the board chose to not follow a recommendation doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be open to more exposure in a lawsuit.
But you could be.
Always.
Right.
You can sue for anything. Yes, depends. Sure.
All right, well, I don't know if I need to make a motion or can I just say that we want to have, we'll look at having a meeting.
I would suggest you make a motion to call, so the public hears, staff has clear direction to call a public meeting. I believe you wanted, what is it, this Friday in the brief discussion? So the date of that is, let's see, the 14th. So November 14th at 10 a.m. in the Township Building. Was that what the consensus was?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I would suggest somebody make a motion to direct staff to advertise that public meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Oh, I have
Oh,
to,
you're
or
gonna-
did,
I
like,
made the motion.
make the motion.
Per the solicitor's statement.
Right.
Seconded by Audrey.
Second.
And any public comment?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you again, everyone. Thank you. With regard to this topic, thank you.